Chapter 585, Exploring Varying Possibilities. Ray's breathing felt heavy. He had thought, for sure, that his theory would be correct or at least show some bearing in reality. None of these faces and names resemble her at all. If she wanted me to find her, she would have left something behind. Anything. Initially, Ray was chill about it. When he checked for the first time and didn't find her, he was sure he just missed something. But, after 12 times now, going over the documents of every single adventurer that had registered from the day of his coma till present, he found nothing. Checked all the details, even the information of all the quests they've taken. Yet, nothing. Ray felt stuck. More frustrating than his growing anxiety was the fact that he had to suppress it every time, so he was forcibly calm about everything. The cycle continued for far too long that it began to grow infuriating. Unfortunately, when he stopped actively controlling that portion of his emotion, the system did it for him, forcefully granting him full clarity. Okay, so what if she didn't register as an adventurer? She could still be in the city, right? There are people who challenge the dungeons without being adventurers, right? Yeah, but that's illegal. Noah said while shaking his head. Esm doesn't strike me as someone who would go down that route. Not only would that be morally wrong, something a good person like her wouldn't resort to unnecessarily, but it only made it harder to find her. If she wanted you to find her here, wouldn't she have registered? If there was no record of her, it most likely meant she didn't choose to stay in the adventurer's city. Does that mean the second option is what she? I already told you that it's a dumb proposition. I'm sure there are other ways to explain her disappearance. Noah folded his arms and raised a brow, staring at Ray with curious eyes. You know her best. What could she have been up to? Well, there are many explanations, in all honesty. Ray responded as he leaked out a misty sigh. He had no idea where to begin. Still, a dark thought kept creeping in his mind, one that he had been avoiding since he thought about Esme after waking up. She could be in danger. Maybe even dead. There are many explanations as to why she isn't. Stop being so negative. She could also be exploring the world at the moment, or maybe looking for a cure for your coma. Just saying. Ray's eyes widened as he stared at Noah. That's true. Esm doesn't know I'm awake yet. What if, the same way he desperately wanted to lift Alicia's curse, Esm was also trying her best somewhere to seek out a remedy for him? If that's the case, she could be anywhere. Perhaps he had to actively begin searching for her, starting from wherever the dungeon's exit led to at the point of her departure from it. I remember Esm mentioning glitched skills. Does that mean she knows more about curses too? No. That's a bit of a far-fetched assumption. If she knew about curses, she would have done something to help her friends and the other kids back in Scylla's lair. Or could it be because she knows about curses that she knew there wasn't hope for those ones? Well, the only way to really know is to find and ask her. Ray settled in his thoughts as he looked blankly into the air. Unfortunately, that can't be done now. I have to fetch Trisha, and we have to make it to the parade that's starting soon. I see. I'll do my best to ask around for more information, not just from the city, but the surrounding ones as well. Ray gave Noah a tired smile and nodded. Thanks, I'd really appreciate it if you did that. It's no problem. I also look forward to meeting her. Why, though? Let's just say I'm interested. Ray's face was still as stoic as ever, so Noah couldn't tell what he was thinking inside his head. The only reason he decided to push this far was to see if his friend truly didn't have anything with Esme before he developed more of an interest in her and made his move. Depending on Ray's response, he would act appropriately. You already have Alicia, so leave some ladies for the rest of us. He wanted to shout out loud, but he maintained his composure. So what will it be, Ree? Well, I guess that's fine. His response was curt and detached, almost as if he didn't care at all. For real? Yeah. I mean, if you want to shoot your shot. That's fine. Noah didn't know if Ray was truly cool with it, but he didn't dare prod any further. He's already made his position clear. Looks like I'll have to work hard to find her before he does. His eyes gleamed as he rubbed his hands together. Even now, I can't get her out of my head. In any case, I have to leave now. Ray opened a portal almost as soon as he said that. Once again, thanks for everything. I wasn't surprised you became the guild master. As long as you have Britta and the others by your side, I'm sure you'll be fine. Well, yeah. They do most of the work for me anyway. I figured. The two boys laughed, almost reminiscent of old times. It was obvious that there were a lot of questions they had to ask each other, but now wasn't the time. As such, they made the unspoken decision to postpone their talk to another time. How do you plan to locate Trisha? Should I ask someone to fetch her for you? No need for that. Ray grinned, his eye glowing crimson. I already know where she is. He already placed tracking magic on her, so not only was he aware of her position in real time, but he could also teleport there in an instant. Later. Whoosh. In a gust of spatial energy, Ray vanished completely. Asterisk. 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 Thanks for reading. I think I'm somewhat back with my mojo. If all goes well, 3 chapters a day will resume effective immediately. Chapter 586, The Parade. Presenting to you all. The Otherworlders, humanity's champions. The parade around the city was met with a loud uproar from the denizens of the city as all the available heroes of mankind, the Otherworlders and the representatives of the nobles, as well as the royal council, walked the streets of the capital. The streets of the newly rebuilt capital exuded a sense of grandeur and rejuvenation. Cobblestone paths winded gracefully through the city, meticulously maintained and polished to a brilliant sheen. As the group paraded through, they noticed intricate mosaics inlaid within the streets, depicting the city's rich history and triumphant rise from the ashes. There were new facilities around, but most of the capital maintained its old architecture. The buildings lining the streets were a fine blend of traditional and contemporary architecture. Towering spires and elegant domes punctuated the skyline, while stout, stone walls and arched windows created an imposing yet welcoming atmosphere. Overall, the atmosphere in the city was one of celebration. The banner of the United Human Alliance, an amalgamation of the crests of all the nations who banded together against the dragons, was raised high to represent humanity's pride. As the flag fluttered in the breeze, the parade passed by. Musicians played lively tunes, their melodies permeating the air and setting a joyous tone. Crowds of townspeople gathered along the streets, their faces filled with pride and excitement as they cheered and waved to the procession. Markets and shops are bustling with activity, their stalls brimming with goods from near and far. Everything felt the same, almost even better. The main highlight of this parade, however, were the 5 Otherworlders who led the charge. Or rather, the one who stood at the forefront. There were Trisha, Justin, Clark, and Belle, each getting waves and recognition for their accomplishments and strength. However, the attention they received was dwarfed by the one that was showered on the true savior of the capital. The man who defeated the creature of calamity, one whom many had witnessed firsthand. His name was Ray Schuyler, recognized leader of the Otherworlders. This attention is a little overwhelming. Ray felt almost nothing despite thinking this, thanks to his increased mastery over controlling his feelings. That didn't make it any less uncomfortable. He glanced to his left and right, ensuring to wave around at the people who cheered for him and his friends. I can see everyone and everything around me, so there really isn't any need to move my head, but Ray was sure he would look like a weirdo if he simply waved and kept his gaze forward. It could also be interpreted as a little rude, something he wasn't being in the slightest. In any case, the parade is a lot more crowded than I thought. Ray was informed that it was just a brief thing that was meant to raise the spirits of everyone in the city and also re-establish the influence and presence of the Otherworlders in the eyes of humanity. And it would also be his proper debut. Thus far, everything seemed to have been blown out of proportion. Did Ader overdo things again because it's my debut? Ray couldn't help but think this was the case. Also, as if the external cheers and noise wasn't enough, he kept getting squeals from inside him. Kaya, Master, you're so awesome. You're so popular and great. Everyone recognizes your greatness. I'm so pleased. Yes, Emil wouldn't shut up. She had been yelling and squealing like an incorrigible fangirl since the parade began, and Ray didn't think it would end anytime soon. Still, he allowed her to indulge herself. Ader is nowhere to be seen, per usual. I guess he's setting things up for the gala, so I can't blame him. Besides, with Ray having a proper look at the city that was previously in flames, he couldn't help but feel incredibly impressed with Ader. He had already seen everything when he flew above the city, but there was something about walking through the streets that granted him a new perspective on things. How did Ader manage all of this within 3 months? Ray couldn't help but wonder. Other than a few areas in the capital's outskirts and fringe areas, Evergreen was pretty much set. Master, I could also accomplish it in 3 months. No, 2. No. Give me only 1. You. Sure. Ray couldn't help but leak out a grin as Emil's voice echoed in his mind. It's true. Let me destroy everything and I'll show you what I can do. The hell? Destroy? What are you talking about? His smile instantly vanished. Tee-hee. Just teasing you, Master. At that moment, Ray wanted to slap his hand on his face for falling for Emil's childish provocation. Still, he controlled himself. At the moment, he was a distinguished fellow, and all eyes were on him. He couldn't afford to mess up. Still, despite all my complaints and reservations, this is beautiful. The city was colorful and cheerful. It warmed his heart a little, especially seeing all the smiles and optimism that the people displayed. I wish you were here to see this, Alicia. Adonis. The parade reached a sacred climax when the group arrived at their destination, the city square. Everyone gathered solemnly there to honor the 3 heroes who had fallen in battle, Eric the Mage, Billy the Warrior, and Snow, the White Rabbit. A sense of reverence hung over the crowd as the statues were unveiled, each one meticulously crafted to capture the essence of the hero's bravery and sacrifice. Eric the Mage stood tall and proud, his piercing gaze immortalized in stone as he held a wand aloft, a symbol of his mastery over magic and his unyielding spirit. His robes flowed gracefully around him, carved with intricate patterns that hinted at his deep knowledge and power. Honestly, he looked a lot more valiant in the statue than he ever looked in real life. Unfortunately, the lifeless eyes of the statue could never capture the gleam of adventure that he often displayed. The glasses did a good job at hiding that fact, though, so the sculpted work resembled him to a fault. Beside him, Billy the warrior was depicted in a moment of triumph, his sword raised high and his armor shining. The sculptor had captured the fierce determination in his expression, reflecting his unwavering commitment to protect the city and its people at any cost. Those who deeply knew Billy knew how somewhat flawed this depiction was, but they still decided to respect the new perception of him. He died being a protector, after all. The statue of Snow, the White Rabbit, was a departure from the traditional hero, but no less significant. Snow's delicate form was seated with a serene expression, embodying both grace and resilience. Her fur was meticulously detailed, and she stood within her forelimbs folded as she made a strangely serious pose. It was strange to see an animal propped up in such a way, but the otherworlders couldn't help but nod in respect. In fact, the statue hardly did her justice. As the crowd looked upon the statues, they felt a deep sense of gratitude and loss. Flowers and tokens of remembrance were laid at the feet of the statues, and prayers were whispered in honor of the fallen heroes. The people vowed to keep their memories alive, ensuring that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. With the statues now standing as a permanent tribute in the heart of the city, the people found solace in knowing that Eric, Billy, and Snow would forever be celebrated as symbols of courage and selflessness. And as for the rest of the otherworlders, the statues served as a reminder of the friends they lost as well as the reason they lost them. The enemies. The dragons. Asterisk. 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 Thanks for reading. So, are you glad to finally see Ray get the recognition he deserves, or did you prefer it when he was still in the shadows? I prefer the latter. Chapter 587, The Gala Incident. How boring. Ray found himself holding a glass of wine as he glanced around him, soaking in the rich and loud atmosphere that surrounded him. The grand hall of the royal palace gleamed under the soft glow of countless crystal chandeliers. The vast space was adorned with silk banners and the large windows had pristine curtains. A majestic red carpet stretched across the polished marble floor, leading to the center of the room. Nobles and powerful men from across the alliance mingled with grace and sophistication. Their attire was a lavish display of wealth and status, rich velvet gowns adorned with precious gemstones and elaborate embroidery, and sharp tailored suits with brocade waistcoats and capes lined with exotic furs. As they conversed, laughter and the delicate clinking of glasses filled the air. At the side of the hall, a grand banquet table overflowed with an array of sumptuous dishes. Roasted meats, exotic fruits, and intricate pastries crafted by only the finest chefs that humanity had to offer. Servants moved with precision, attending to the guests' every need, offering goblets of rare wines and platters of delicacies. A soft melody from a string quartet provided a harmonious backdrop, as some people even took to the dance floor in graceful, flowing movements. Their dance was a reflection of courtly tradition and elegance, still maintaining their dignity with every rhythm made. Essentially, it was a party for the rich. So this is how a gala is. How do people enjoy these things? Ray mumbled while downing some of the wine that sloshed around his cup. He was currently wearing a black suit, the swallowtail tuxedo kind. He initially thought it would blend perfectly well with this kind of scenery, but now that he was here, he realized that he was way out of his league. The people present were adorned in several accessories, most of them enchanted, and it suddenly seemed like he was underdressed for the party. But Ray didn't care. I can't wait for this to end. That way, I can focus more on finding Esme and curing Alicia. He hoped to be able to do those two before being dispatched to the front lines to finally confront the dragons once and for all. There's also the fact that I need to get stronger. Much stronger. Until he could fight and defeat something like Dagon without much of an effort, he wouldn't be satisfied. Divine beasts still pose a danger to me. I can't have that. He felt his grip grow stronger on the glass cup, so he decided to loosen up the tension a little. To do that, he looked around for his classmates, spotting them almost instantly. Justin and Clark were busy flirting with some ladies, or rather, it was Justin doing most of the flirting while Clark was his tag-along. Belle was being approached by many noblemen, many of whom were ogling her with lustful eyes. Of course, they kept up a facade of deference, but Ray could tell that if she wasn't an otherworlder, they would have definitely acted on their urges. Looks like Trisha is getting along well with the security details and the more fit men of the group. Ray smiled as he cast a sideway glance at her. He would have to return her to the adventurer's city after all of this was over, but for now, she could enjoy the party. As one would expect from an event where several rich and powerful people were in attendance, the number of guards that surrounded the palace was incredible. Security constantly patrolled the hallways, and some even stood in the hall itself. All of it was to guarantee as much safety as possible. But isn't this a waste of resources? I doubt these guards will be able to handle any threat that we won't be able to face. Ray glanced at them and observed their status windows. The average guard was around level 10, and while they had some items that helped boost their abilities, their stats and skills were too pathetic to be of any real use when it came to dangerous enemies. Wouldn't they be better used patrolling the city, or any of the outskirts regions, where security is currently thinner? That wasn't his call to make, though. Ray already knew of the hierarchy of this world. And even though the royal palace was the safest place any of these nobles could be thanks to the presence of the otherworlders, they still wanted to have the highest security detail made available to them. Let's not dwell on that. Trisha and everyone else seems to be having some degree of fun, so that's good. He sighed, taking in another gulp. Everyone seemed to be enjoying this celebration to an extent. Except him. Aren't you a sight for sore eyes? A voice echoed in his ears and he glanced to his side almost as soon as he heard it. The lady beside him wore a shimmering white gown that matched her hair, and a necklace with crimson gems that complemented her eyes. She had bangles and earrings of gold, and her shoes seemed impeccably carved, with her pale feet resting atop it. All in all, her outfit only enhanced her beauty. Lucielle. The moment she heard her name, Lucielle smiled at Ray, drawing closer as she reached for his neck. I have no idea what you're doing, hiding in an inconspicuous corner like this. She began to adjust the tie around his neck. Apparently, he got it all wrong. No one is going to notice you if you stay here. That's kind of the idea. She giggled as soon as she heard that, almost as if the very statement was funny. I can relate. But, well. Duty, huh? Bingo. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, though since you already acted chummy with Conrad and Vita, you might as well see this through to the end. Ray sighed as Lucielle finished her speech. Coincidentally, his tie was also perfectly readjusted at that moment. He didn't even know where to begin when it came to the Grand Mage, who was now broadly smiling at him. I made sure to erase my presence, yet she still found me here. Was she actively searching for me, or? Looking at her bright face, he couldn't help but admire it regardless. She really is pretty. So. What do you say, Ray Schuyler? Want to dance with me? If anyone had told Ray that he would be asked to dance by the prettiest lady in the room, he would have said they were crazy. But, here it was something he would never have had in his life on Earth. Here, he was a superstar whom everyone had to respect and fear. He was a champion of his people, and someone who could stand at the highest point of influence. Yet, I don't feel particularly moved by it. Ray thought he would feel a lot happier, more satisfied, more confident, and perhaps a lot prouder after getting to this point. But it all felt the same. Maybe my perspective is getting a little skewed. He hid his sigh as he reached out his hand and held Lucille's. Just enjoy the moment, Ray. You deserve it. After putting himself in that mental space, he finally smiled at the young lady before him and drew closer to her. Sure, why not? Asterisk. 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 Chapter 588, The Gala Incident. Lucille was a great dancer. Ray could feel it with every rhythm of her body as he held her and she held him. They easily took the center stage and everyone immediately made way for them. All of a sudden, within the snap of a finger, they became the center of attention. The tempo of the music suddenly began to rise as the two began to move faster, and everyone seemed to slow down. In fact, they stopped dancing altogether. Everyone is looking at us, Ray. Lucille said with a smile, her red eyes glowing as she stared straight into his eyes. I know. As he said this, he raised her into the air, firmly holding her waist as he turned. Afterward, he pulled her back to the ground and drew her closer to his chest. This was something he had seen in movies and he just wanted to try it out. Thankfully, he was athletic enough, and his body was perfectly in sync with his mind. He pulled the move off splendidly, and the gasps of claps from people seemed to indicate that he did a good job. I didn't think you were this energetic, Ray. Lucille also gasped as she held onto his shoulders and they continued dancing. Have you always been this way? Ray shook his head and served for the side, making sure Lucille's body nearly fell before he grabbed her from behind and paused for a moment. They both looked into each other's eyes and he smiled. Not always. He picked her back up and they continued the dance. At this point, everyone's full focus was on the two of them. Even the groups who were talking whether about business or leisure instantly ceased their actions and worked the captivating dance of the two. The dance of the strongest. So, Ray. About that talk I asked you about. Swerving and turning, they continued their movements with perfect fluidity. They were both in sync with each other. I apologize if it came off as rude or overbearing, but I'm serious, you know. Why do you want to have the talk so badly? To learn, obviously. You have knowledge and power I don't know of. I want to study it and see if I can apply it to my existing knowledge. Why? To grow stronger. Well. Do you want to get stronger so you can defeat the dragons? Protect your people? Or is there something else? For a moment, silence echoed between the two of them. Then, right as Lucille twisted her body, with Ray holding her hand upward, then drawing her closer into his arms, he whispered into her ears. Come on. If you don't tell me your motivations, how am I supposed to be convinced? She smiled at him, her face close to his. I can't lie, can I? Nope. They resumed dancing at a normal pace, and then she heaved a sigh before continuing. Let's just say it's an obsession of mine. Oh? What is? It drives me crazy when I know there's something I don't know, but someone else knows it. Huh? Ray was rightfully confused. It was only normal that others would have more knowledge about certain things than any single individual no matter who they were. Lucille, even as the Grand Mage, would be severely lacking in terms of some information. How could she obsess over such a thing? It has to be something I'm interested in, of course, so I'm not bothered about stuff like martial arts or politics. Oh. Ray let out softly. Now it makes sense. Lucielle, just like anyone, had her interests. It just happened to be something that Ray was incredibly adept at. I can understand the reason for her interest in me, but I'm really not interested in magic talk right now. Ader had already confirmed that magic wasn't going to help him cure Alicia, so it was of little utility to him at the moment. The only one it really benefited was Lucielle. If I had more time, I would have considered it more. But right now, I have other important things to worry about. If he sorted those things on schedule, and he had some time to spare, then he wouldn't mind having an extensive talk with her. Look, Lucielle. I'm not asking for an answer now. I already know I have less to offer you than you have to offer me. Her tone seemed especially desperate, but she kept her composure nonetheless. So she noticed my indifference, huh? Just keep it in mind. Keep me in mind. I'll come up with something that'll interest you. Once I manage to do that, you won't be able to hesitate this much. Ray felt a smile forming on his face as he watched Lucille's determined expression. You're really confident, huh? Yup. The moment she flashed her signature smile, Ray felt his heart jump a little. Just you wait, Ray Skylar. I'm going to pick your brains to my satisfaction. Very soon. It felt a bit strange, watching Lucielle narrow her eyes on him. The music was slowly fading, meaning the end of the dance was arriving. Bit by bit, they began to detach from each other, yet their gaze remained unmoving. Well, I look forward to it. They finally concluded their dance, and Ray bowed while Lucielle curtsied. This was followed by cheers and applause from the crowd. I'll be leaving now. Lucielle reached out to Ray and planted a light kiss on his cheek. The moment she did so, he got another whiff of her scent. It was enchanting. You should interact with more people, Kay. Sure. She left soon after that, leaving Ray standing all alone on the stage. He stood there for a moment, looking at her as she walked ahead. It felt like time slowed down as he felt more thumpings in his heart. I wonder why she's still single. He lightly touched his cheek and smiled. Before he could fully enjoy the moment, however, a crowd of nobles and guests closed in on him and began bombarding him with words. Sir Ray, a moment. I've heard all about your exploits. Would you like to join me later for a cup of tea? My daughter tells me so much about you. You should meet her sometime. Could you help train my child? I'm your biggest fan. I love you, Sir Ray. Sir Ray, my name is. It went on and on, as the number of people kept increasing. Until eventually, Lucille's departing frame was completely overshadowed. Ha! These people are annoying. As Ray smiled and spoke to the people that surrounded him, slowly easing himself out of the crowd only to meet more people who wanted to talk to him, he began to get miffed. He understood that they weren't particularly acting maliciously towards him, but he also didn't want to have anything to do with them. Their wide grins, an overly reverent attitude dripped with insincerity. It was all clearly fake. I can tell what's on their minds. He coldly thought as he examined the people he spoke to. It was obvious that they were only being respectful to him because of his role to mankind. They so desperately hoped he continued to protect them so the dragons would never reach their territory. They live in the south, so danger will have to get past me first before reaching them. In essence, he and his allies would have to continue taking the brunt of danger while they led relatively peaceful and comfortable lives? None of that really annoyed Ray, since he wasn't particularly fighting for their sakes. It was the fact that they wouldn't stop bothering him that began to get him riled up. Thankfully, his emotions were kept at an all-time low. If that wasn't the case. Sir Ray. Am I correct? It's a pleasure to finally meet you. As Ray heard this familiar voice, he swiftly turned to his right. There, he was met with three familiar faces. Rebel. He smiled broadly at the older man, looking at both his sides to see Asher and Kara standing right next to him. They were all wearing exquisite outfits, though the highlight of their attire were the enchanted items that they donned. In fact, pretty much everything the trio had on was enchanted, though there were standouts. Rebel's walking cane, Kara's glasses, and Asher's single earring. Whether this was solely for security, it seemed they achieved both. The enchanted items were top tier, and they were noticed by those who had an eye for such items. It was one of the reasons why Rebel wasn't interrupted when he spoke. I'm glad you still recognize me. Rebel grinned, and the other two bowed and curtsied in greeting. If you don't mind, I'd like to have a discussion with you. Ray's eyes lit up the moment he heard those words. Perfect timing. Using Rebel as a good excuse, he could finally ditch everyone. I don't mind at all. Asterisk. 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 Thanks for reading. I know you all have thoughts, so just leave them in the comments. Chapter 589, The Gala Incident. I see. So you attended as the Reaper group. Ray and his three business partners, or rather, underlings, were speaking outside the hall in the garden downstairs. They had exchanged a few words on their way there, so some of his questions were answered very quickly. Ader did tell me about how he took temporary charge of the Reaper group and used their resources to help rebuild the capital. Ray thought to himself as he analyzed their presence and its significance in the grand scheme of things. Thanks to the Reaper group's aid, the Royal Council officially recognized them as their supplier for enchanted items. Rebel was to be granted a noble title once the capital was fully constructed, and the Reaper group's name was going to become inconceivably big in no time at all. Indeed. We've also had talks with some nobles around, and it looks like we're going to be expanding very soon. The areas in the south were a profitable area for business, but enchanted items weren't particularly needed there since the people there were relatively safer than other regions. But all of those things were slowly changing. With our group being officially recognized by the Royal Council, the nobles will not want to be left behind, so they'll do their best to arm themselves with the best we can offer. Since our products are the trend at the moment, they'll patronize us for the heck of it. Rebel was right. The behavior of the rich wasn't particularly complex when it came to purchasing luxury items. But that isn't all. Ray narrowed his eye as he analyzed all Rebel was saying. Since they've been gathering otherworlders, it's possible that they also have plans for the enchanted items that they want to purchase from the Reaper group. Perhaps the nobles were planning some sort of scheme to overthrow the Royal Council or something of the sort. No. That's not possible thanks to the curse. The council could not betray the nobles, but the latter also couldn't betray the former. I might be overthinking this. Let's focus on other things first. I still can't believe Sir Relix was actually an otherworlder who was summoned to save this world. Asher, still disguised as his Alderd alias, beamed as he spoke to Ray. It truly is a pleasure. Haha. It's all good. Ray then turned to Kara, who had been silent throughout the exchange. And how are you, Kara? Ader tells me you're the one keeping the group afloat. Haha. Sir Ader overestimates my abilities. She shyly responded, shifting her glasses as she nervously looked away. Ray didn't remember her being this bashful, but he reckoned it was due to his change in status and perspective. So this is what you look like under the mask. Not what I expected. I almost forgot about that. Ray's eyes slightly widened once he had this thought. With his emotions suppressed, his anxiety and complex had been so drastically reduced that it was very difficult for him to be so self-conscious of his appearance. It actually took effort to think along those lines. That's rude, Asher. Rebel reprimanded, glaring deeply at the boy beside him. I apologize. I just meant. You look a lot younger than I sorry. Now that I think about it, isn't his real age close to mine? Ray smiled to himself as he shrugged the whole thing off. He even chuckled slightly. It's fine, really. Asher heaved a sigh of relief. Rebel maintained an apologetic smile, while Kara fidgeted as she stood. The three had a lot to discuss, but thanks to Asher's supposed blunder, everything took a slight halt. Ray figured he had to keep the conversation going, so he started off with something casual. By the way, where's Yuri? She's currently patrolling the area. I believe she should be in the hall at this moment, perhaps searching for us, or looking around. As a group officially recognized by the council, the Reaper Group's security detail was allowed that freedom. Of course, I already knew where she was. I even know her exact location at the moment. Ray smiled. The moment he saw Rebel, Asher, and Kara, he began to scan around for trances of Yuri. That girl still makes me uneasy. It was one of the reasons he made them walk to the garden to talk. He knew she was heading for the hall through another entrance and he wanted to avoid her at all costs. Thankfully, his plan worked. She's inside the hall talking to Trisha right now. I always pictured those two getting along as warriors, of course. In this world, female warriors were extremely rare. Since martial arts were presumed to be suited for men, and magic geared towards women, this was the status quo for most of the people in the Alliance. The only female warriors he knew to be decently strong were Trisha, Britta, Yuri, and Lucy. No other female came close. In any case, now that we've broken the ice, let's continue talking about business. He thought to himself as Rebel took the cue and shifted to the recent activities of the Reaper Group and their future plans. Ray smiled as he listened to their discussion. Keep going. This is a good chance to catch up on all I've missed. Ader had only given Ray a brief summary of the whole thing, since there were a lot of things going on at the time. Even now, Ray was yet to fully unpack all the business he had with Ader. All of that could wait, after all. Speaking of Ader, though, where is he? Ray had previously thought he was busy directing the gala's preparation, so he didn't think too much about his absence. However, Ader wasn't present at the gala either. Master, what if I told you I know where he is? Ray rolled his eyes as he heard the voice of the symbiote slime in his head. Are you just saying that to get me to speak to you? Yeah. You finally responded. I mean, no. Ray had been ignoring Emile all night due to her constant talk inside his head. She was especially loud during his dance with Lucielle, though he silenced her out of his mind. It seemed she was looking for every opportunity to make him talk to her, so she tried to gain his interest by telling him about her knowledge of Ader's whereabouts. Unfortunately for her, he was bound to her so he could tell that she was lying. Nice try. Wait, master. Okay, I'm sorry. SOR. Once again, Ray zoned Emile from his thoughts and continued to focus on his business talk with Rebel and the rest. There were a few things that were initially difficult for him to understand. After all, this was all about business, but he figured them out once he thought about them deeply. Good news is that the Reaper Group is about to get very rich. Bad news is that resources are running low, and there isn't enough supply for the demand that is to come. Money was no longer the issue. The problem was getting very lucrative resources that could serve as raw materials enough to deliver items of the best quality at a mass rate. If only we had that elf deal again, Rebel said in passing, which made Ray remember something. Something he previously thought could wait. I guess I'll have to talk to Ader about it later. Asterisk. 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 Thanks for reading. I'm sure some of you can already see where this is going. Or can you? Chapter 590, The Gala Incident. The business discourse lasted quite a while. Ray didn't particularly mind, since he enjoyed the change of pace. Besides, the Reaper Group was technically his own. So, this was all his business. The war won't last forever. At some point, I'll get strong enough and we'll beat the dragons. I need to consider what happens after that. Gathering enough money to last him a lifetime, while also running a business that would be considered a multi-billion-dollar company on Earth, wasn't that the dream? I refuse to be a broke hero, was one of his mottos, which was what drove him to her so invested in business even though he still had a lot of things on his mind. It seems Rebel is managing the situation well. Strategic planning is his forte, after all. Asher deals with the internal running of the business, while Kara handles marketing, finances, and also aids greatly in terms of production. However, there was only so far they could go without Ray's assistance. Looks like I'll have to add this to the list of things I'll have to do, he thought to himself as they concluded the discourse. So what will you do now? Ray stared at Rebel after he was done analyzing everything he just heard. We need to speak to more investors and potential clients. Ah, I see. You're not done networking. Not even close. We only approached you because it would be wrong of us not to. Plus. The older man gave a smirk, his eyes twinkling slightly. Something told me you wanted to get out of that situation. Ray chuckled as soon as he heard that. Well, that something was correct. They went ahead to shake hands, and after offering a few more pleasantries, Rebel and company returned upstairs while he remained in the garden. Heaving out visible breaths, he enjoyed the solemn melancholy that surrounded him. Whoosh! A glass cup, filled with wine appeared on his hand as soon as he stretched it. Spatial magic sure is useful, he mused, taking in another gulp. I can't get drunk thanks to the system, and my previous disgust for alcohol has been altered thanks to my body manipulation. Ha! Smacking his lips after a heavy sigh, he glanced at the remaining liquid in the glass. Ray remained like that for a few more seconds before smiling a little and then speaking. Are you going to keep watching me from the shadows, or will you say something already? His voice echoed into the lonesome garden, and for a while no response was given. It seemed he was just talking to himself, perhaps making a worded jab into thin air. But no. There was someone present. And she smiled the moment he called out for her, finally approaching him after maintaining proper composure. As expected of the strongest otherworlder, the sultry voice of the girl dripped with flattery as she took a few more steps forward. She was right behind Ray, yet he kept his gaze forward, taking a good sip from his glass. Who are you and what do you want? It was a useless question. Ray already knew who this woman was. He had been observing her for some time now. The reason he brought the conversation he had with Rebel to a close despite still having a few more questions was because she was approaching and he didn't want her listening in. It was rather unfortunate that she met them at all, but by then it was already too late. They were already finished with all the important bits. She's been watching me ever since, which means I'm the one she's after. Ray grinned internally. There didn't seem to be any killing intent oozing from her, which meant she was sensible enough not to start a fight she couldn't possibly win. Still, that didn't mean he could be careless. The only reason why Ray didn't bother turning back to look at her was because he already had a complete vision of everything around him. And the reason why he even decided to acknowledge her presence was due to already using his on her. I know who you are. Don't tell me you don't recognize my voice. Slowly, the invisibility of the girl began to unravel, revealing her true identity. Ray's smile grew wider. At least you didn't try to hide it? Slowly turning, he looked at her, one hand in his pocket and the other holding the glass. Felicia. The girl's black hair swayed to the side, thanks to the garden's wind, revealing her cute features. She wore a nice black gown, with red and purple linen decorating the sides. A choker was wrapped around her neck, and she had gleaming dark earrings that matched her gloves and shoes. Enchanted items were wrapped around her fingers, wrists, neck, waist, and many other regions, proving how much money and power she actually possessed compared to most. However, to Ray, none of this held as much significance to him as how he remembered her from the past. Felicia was Adam's girlfriend, and one of his closest confidants back when he was still alive. They were awful people back on Earth, meaning they both had pretty bad karma points. She, as well as the other four, became a part of Adam's small caucus, turning into his yes men. After his death, they became very silent. And when given the opportunity to leave, they were among the first to ditch the group. Ray didn't really feel anything upon seeing her. He already had a feeling he would run into her after recognizing the Four Stooges that she was always with. So they're all part of the noble faction, huh? I wonder why Adrian left out this tiny detail when he told me about what everyone has been up to. Perhaps this development was very recent. Or maybe Adrian simply wanted to throw Ray off their scent. Either way, he intended to find out. Bingo. You recognized me. Why wouldn't I? We were classmates, and you weren't particularly nice. He said, his gaze confidently meeting her. She parted her lips, almost saying something, but Ray's voice cut her off. Not that I care about any of that now. He wasn't lying either. His old classmates were the least of his worries at the moment. There was only really one question he had for her. What do you want? Asterisk. 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 Thanks for reading. We're getting closer to the Kickstarter for this arc's ride, so get ready. You probably